Manager humiliated him every day until he helped his daughter. Michael Johnson lowered his head once again as he listened to the harsh words from the manager of the Imperial Palace Hotel in Miami. The impeccable uniform of the bellhop couldn't hide the dark circles under his eyes from working 2 jobs to support his sick mother. It had become a daily routine. Incompetent. How many times do I have to repeat that VIP guests' luggage goes to the presidential suite first? Shouted Richard Peterson, the operations manager, in front of all the employees in the lobby. The luxurious 5-star hotel overlooking the bay was one of the most prestigious on the Florida coast, attracting business people, politicians, and celebrities from across the United States. The marble walls and crystal chandeliers contrasted with the inhumane treatment Michael endured daily. "I'm sorry, Mr. Peterson. It won't happen again," Michael replied softly, gripping the luggage cart so tightly his fingers turned white. "Your apologies mean nothing. Next time, find another job." Richard turned his back and walked away, leaving Michael swallowing his humiliation while the other employees averted their eyes, embarrassed. That same day, at the end of his shift, Michael was called into the manager's office. With a racing heart, he knocked and entered. Richard was sitting in his leather chair, flipping through reports without even looking up. "I'm reorganizing the work schedule. Starting tomorrow, you'll also cover the night shift when Will is off," he said bluntly. "But Mr. Peterson, I already work 2 shifts and do delivery gigs to pay for my mother's treatment," Michael tried to argue. Richard finally looked up, his gaze as cold as the marble in the lobby. "That's your problem. If you're not happy, the door's right there," he pointed to the exit. "There's a line of unemployed people who'd take your spot." Michael swallowed hard and nodded. He had no choice. The hotel's paycheck, despite the humiliation, was essential to keeping his mother's medication up to date. When he left the hotel that night, heavy rain poured over Miami. Michael pulled his worn coat tighter and walked to the bus stop, thinking about the long journey ahead to his apartment in Hialeah. As he waited, he noticed a couple of tourists sheltering from the rain under the awning of the bakery across the street. They looked happy, carefree, a world completely different from his. The bus arrived packed, as usual. During the nearly 2-hour ride, Michael closed his eyes for a few minutes, allowing himself a brief rest before arriving home to care for Mrs. Evelyn, his mother. The next morning, he arrived at the hotel 30 minutes before his shift. It was his daily ritual, arriving early, reviewing the procedures manual, and practicing English and Spanish phrases to better assist international guests. His dream was to one day work at the front desk, but Richard always blocked any chance of promotion. "Good morning, Michael," greeted Sarah, the hotel's longest-serving receptionist, and one of the few who treated him with respect. "I saw what happened yesterday. Don't let Richard get to you." "I'm used to it," he replied with a shy smile, adjusting his uniform tie. "You don't deserve this. Have you thought about filing a complaint with the general manager?" Sarah asked, glancing around to make sure no one was listening. Michael shook his head. "And risk losing my job? I can't. My mother depends on the medication." The day passed like any other. Michael carried luggage, opened doors, smiled at guests, and bowed his head to Richard's unfair criticism. Around 3 in the afternoon, while reorganizing the luggage carts in the service area, he heard a commotion in the main lobby. When he got there, he saw a small blonde girl about 6 years old, standing alone in the middle of the lobby. She was wearing a lilac dress and holding a small rolling suitcase. She looked around, visibly lost and scared. The front desk was crowded, with a tour group checking in, and no one had noticed the child. Michael approached cautiously and knelt to her level. "Hi, are you okay? Can I help?" he asked with a gentle smile. The girl looked at him with big blue eyes filled with unshed tears. "I'm looking for my dad," she replied in a shaky voice. "What's his name?" "Maybe I can help you find him," Michael offered, keeping his voice calm so as not to scare her further. "Richard Peterson," she answered. Michael's heart skipped a beat. The manager's daughter? He didn't even know Richard had a child. The man never spoke about his personal life, and there were no photos on his desk. "Oh, I see. Your dad works here. He's the hotel manager," Michael said, trying to stay composed. "My name's Michael. What's yours?" "Emma," the girl replied, wiping a tear with her dress sleeve. Mom dropped me off because she had to work late today, and school ended early. She told me to wait for Dad, but I don't know where his office is. Michael glanced around. Several staff members were watching, but no one stepped forward. Everyone knew whose daughter she was, and no one wanted to get involved with anything related to the feared manager. "I can take you to your dad's office, okay?" Michael offered, holding out his hand. Emma hesitated for a moment, then nodded and took his hand. Michael picked up her small suitcase and began guiding her through the hotel corridors. "Do you work for my dad?" Emma asked as they walked. "Yes, I carry guests' luggage," Michael replied. "Do you like your job?" The innocent question caught Michael off guard. How could he explain to a child that he hated his job because of her? "Father? I like helping people," he answered diplomatically. "What about you? Do you like school?" Emma made a face. "Sort of. The other kids don't play with me much. They say I'm weird because I like reading instead of playing ball." Something about the girl's honesty touched Michael. Before he could respond, they reached Richard's office door. "Here we are," he said, knocking lightly. No answer. Michael tried again, louder this time. "He must be in a meeting," he explained to Emma, who looked like she might cry again. "But don't worry, we'll find him." Just then, Sarah appeared, in the hallway. "Michael, what's going on?" she asked, then noticed the girl. "Oh, hello, Emma. Do you know my dad?" Emma asked hopefully. "Yes, sweetheart, he's in the auditorium in a meeting with investors. It'll be at least an hour," Sarah explained, giving Michael a worried look. "What now?" Michael muttered. "Can I stay with you until my dad's done?" Emma asked, looking at Michael with pleading eyes. The question put Michael in an impossible situation. If Richard saw him with his daughter, he might misunderstand and use it as an excuse to fire him. On the other hand, he couldn't just leave the child alone. "Of course you can," he replied, deciding any consequences were better than abandoning her. "Have you had lunch yet?" Emma shook her head. "Then let's take care of that first," Michael said, smiling. "Sarah, can you let Mr. Peterson know his daughter is here when the meeting ends?" "Will do," Sarah replied, winking at Emma. "Take good care of her." Michael took Emma to the staff cafeteria. It was a simple place, very different from the hotel's luxurious restaurants, but it was clean and cozy. The cook, Mrs. Betty, a Floridian woman with a wide smile and skilled hands, widened her eyes when she saw the manager's daughter there. "Good heavens, what's this little girl doing here?" she whispered to Michael. "Her mother left her at the hotel, but her father is in a meeting. Could you make something for her to eat?" Michael asked. Mrs. Betty looked at Emma, who was watching everything with curiosity, and her heart softened. "Of course. What do you like to eat, sweetheart?" "Mac and cheese," Emma answered shyly. "I'll make the best mac and cheese you've ever had in your life," Mrs. Betty promised, already heading to the stoves. While they waited, Michael tried to entertain Emma. "You said you like to read. What's your favorite book?" Emma's face lit up. "The book. Thief," she answered excitedly. "But my dad says it's too sad for someone my age." Michael smiled. He loved that book too. "It is a little sad, yes, but it's also very beautiful. You must be really smart to enjoy that kind of reading." "My dad says I'm too smart. For my own good," Emma said, clearly repeating something she'd heard many times. "He works a lot, doesn't he?" "Yes, he's a very busy man," Michael replied, choosing his words carefully. "Mum says he cares more about the hotel than about people," Emma commented with the disarming honesty of children. "That's why they don't live together anymore." Michael didn't know what to say. He had no idea Richard was divorced, though it explained a lot about the man's bitter demeanor. Mrs. Betty saved him from the awkward silence, bringing a steaming plate of mac and cheese. "Here you go, princess. Eat up so you can grow strong like your dad." Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, don't forget to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It really helps us who are just starting out. Now, continuing. Emma ate hungrily while Michael watched her, thinking how different she seemed from her father. Where Richard was cold and calculating, Emma was warm and sincere. She finished the plate quickly and looked at Michael with a smile. It was delicious. "Thank you, Mum," she said politely to Mrs. Betty. "You're welcome, sweetheart. Come back anytime," the cook replied, clearly charmed by the girl. Michael checked his watch. There was still time before Richard's meeting would end, and he needed to get back to work. "Emma, I need to help some guests with their luggage. Do you want to see what my job's like?" The girl nodded eagerly. "Can I help too?" "Of course," Michael smiled. "You can be my assistant today." Back in the lobby, Michael grabbed his luggage cart. Emma walked beside him, observing everything with curious eyes. A couple of tourists had just arrived, and Michael went to assist them. "Good afternoon, welcome to the Imperial Palace Hotel. May I help you with your bags?" he offered professionally. "Yes, please," the man replied, handing over 2 large suitcases. "This is my assistant, Emma," Michael introduced, much to the girl's delight. The tourists smiled at the child, who greeted them with a little curtsy. "How adorable," the woman remarked. "Is she your daughter?" Before Michael could answer, Emma chimed in. "No, my dad is the hotel manager. He's really busy today, so I'm helping Michael." The tourists exchanged surprised glances but smiled politely. Michael loaded the suitcases onto the cart and Emma insisted on pushing too, placing her small hands next to his. As they walked toward the elevator, several staff members watched the unusual scene with expressions ranging from surprise to concern. A baggage handler spending time with the manager's daughter was unheard of and potentially dangerous for Michael. In the elevator, Emma continued their conversation. "Do you have any children, Michael?" "No, I don't. I live with my mother." "She's sick and needs care," he replied. "What kind of illness does she have?" "Emma, we shouldn't ask those kinds of questions," the tourist gently interjected. "It's okay," Michael assured her. "She has a condition called Parkinson's. It makes her hands shake a lot, and she has trouble doing things on her own." "That's sad," Emma remarked thoughtfully. "You're a good son for taking care of her." Those simple words from a child made Michael's eyes well up. He cleared his throat, masking his emotion as they reached the guest floor. After dropping off the luggage in the room and receiving a generous tip, partly thanks to Emma's charm, they returned to the lobby. Michael went back to his tasks with his little assistant by his side. The girl's presence turned the hard work into something almost fun. As they carried another suitcase, Emma asked a question that caught Michael off guard. "Why does my dad yell at you?" Michael froze. So she had witnessed the humiliations. "Your father has a lot of responsibility and sometimes gets stressed," he replied diplomatically. "But he doesn't yell at Sarah or the head chef, only at you and the other baggage handlers." The girl's sharp perception was impressive. "Maybe because our work is more visible when things go wrong," Michael tried to explain, not wanting to speak ill of Richard to his own daughter. Emma stayed silent for a moment, processing the information. "That's not fair," she finally concluded. Michael didn't respond. What could he say? That life wasn't fair? That people like him, born in poor neighborhoods without access to good education, had to accept humiliation to survive? She was too young to understand such complexities. "Sometimes things are complicated, Emma," was all he said. Just then, a commotion in the lobby caught their attention. Richard Peterson had just come out of a meeting and seemed to be searching for something or someone with a furious expression. When his eyes landed on Michael standing next to Emma, his face twisted with rage. "Emma!" he called, striding across the lobby. "Come here right now." The girl looked at her father, then at Michael, clearly confused by the overreaction. "Hi, Daddy, I was helping Michael with the bags," she explained innocently. Richard grabbed his daughter's arm, pulling her away from Michael. "What do you think you're doing with my daughter?" he demanded, glaring at Michael with fiery eyes. "Emma was alone in the lobby looking for you. Her ex-wife dropped her off because school ended early," Michael explained, keeping his voice calm despite his racing heart. "Mrs. Sarah said you were in a meeting and couldn't be disturbed." "And who gave you the right to spend time with her? You could have left her at the front desk." Richard was furious, speaking loudly enough to draw the attention of everyone in the lobby. "Daddy, Michael was really nice to me," Emma protested. "He gave me lunch and let me be his assistant." "Be quiet, Emma," Richard ordered, then turned back to Michael. "In my office now." Michael followed Richard to his office, feeling the worried gazes of Sarah and other staff as they passed. Emma was left at the front desk, where a receptionist was instructed to watch her. When the office door closed, Richard exploded. "How dare you use my daughter to get close to me? Do you think this will earn you some kind of favor?" Michael was stunned by the accusation. "Mr. Peterson, I only helped your daughter because she was alone and scared. I had no idea who she was until she told me." "Don't lie to me," Richard slammed his hand on the desk. "Do you think I don't know what you're trying to do? Getting close to my daughter to manipulate me?" "Sir, with all due respect, I would never do that. Emma's safety was my only concern." "Safety?" Richard let out a humorless laugh. "In the hotel I manage, are you implying my daughter wouldn't be safe here?" Michael realized there was no argument he could make. Richard was determined to interpret his actions in the worst possible way. "Starting tomorrow, you're suspended for 3 days without pay, and stay away from my daughter." "Understood." Michael's stomach sank. 3 days without pay meant fewer medications for his mother, maybe even having to borrow money. "Mr. Peterson, please reconsider. My mother depends on the medicine I buy with my salary." "Not my problem," Richard cut in coldly. "Consider yourself lucky you still have a job. Now get out." Michael left the office with his head down, feeling wronged and powerless. In the lobby, his eyes met Emma's as she watched him from the front desk with a sad expression. He offered her a small smile before heading to the service area. Sarah caught up with him in the hallway. "Michael, what happened?" she asked, concerned. "I got suspended for 3 days without pay," he replied, his voice strained. "For helping his daughter." "That's outrageous. I'll talk to him." "No, Sarah," Michael interrupted. "It'll only make things worse. I need this job. I can't risk it." Sarah squeezed his arm in solidarity. "I'll organize a collection among the staff to cover those days. We won't leave you hanging." "Thank you," Michael said, moved by his co-worker's kindness. When he left the hotel that night, the rain had stopped, but a storm brewed inside him. The injustice of the situation weighed on his already tired shoulders. He was so lost in thought that he barely noticed the luxury car parked in front of the hotel, or the elegant woman stepping out of it, holding Emma's hand. "Michael!" The girl's voice snapped him back to reality. Emma ran toward him, followed by the woman who must have been her mother. "Hi, Emma," he greeted, surprised. "You're Michael?" the woman asked, extending her hand. "I'm Catherine, Emma's mother. She hasn't stopped talking about you the whole way home." "Nice to meet you, Ma'am," Michael replied, confused by the situation. "Emma told me how you looked after her today. I wanted to thank you in person," Catherine said with a genuine smile. "Richard can be difficult sometimes." The understatement almost made Michael smile. "It was my pleasure to help. Emma's an amazing girl." "Michael, I want you to meet my teacher tomorrow," Emma exclaimed excitedly. "She asked us to bring someone special to class, and I want to bring you." "Emma, Michael probably has to work tomorrow," Catherine said gently. Michael hesitated. Should he mention the suspension? He decided against. "Actually, I'm off for the next few days," he said, technically not lying. "But I'm not sure it'd be appropriate." "Please, Michael," Emma begged. "I'll be the only one without anyone if you don't come." The desperation in the girl's voice struck something deep in Michael. It seemed she truly didn't have many friends or caring adults besides her mother. "Emma told me her father doesn't let her invite her grandparents, and I, unfortunately, have an important meeting I can't reschedule," Catherine explained, looking genuinely concerned. "I wouldn't ask if it weren't important to her." Michael looked at Emma, her hopeful eyes, and felt something stir inside him. A determination not to let her down, even if it complicated things further with Richard. "What time is the presentation?" he finally asked. Emma's face lit up. "At 10 o'clock at New World Academy in Coral Gables." Michael knew the upscale neighborhood, though he rarely had reason to go there. "I'll be there," he promised. "Really?" Emma jumped for joy and hugged him impulsively. Michael felt awkward but returned the brief embrace. "Thank you, Michael," Catherine said sincerely. "It means so much to her." After they left, Michael continued to the bus stop with mixed feelings. He knew he was risking his job even more, but something about Emma's situation touched him deeply. That bright, sensitive girl seemed as lonely as he sometimes felt. The next day, Michael woke up early as usual, even though he didn't have to go to work. Mrs. Evelyn noticed something different about her son during breakfast. "What's going on, my boy? Why aren't you in uniform?" Michael hesitated. He didn't want to worry his mother. "I took a few days off, Mom," he lied, hating himself for it. "Days off? You never take days off." Mrs. Evelyn knew him too well. "Did something happen at the hotel?" "Nothing to worry about," Michael assured her. "Actually, I'm going to a school today. The manager's daughter invited me to a special presentation." Mrs. Evelyn raised her eyebrows in surprise. "The manager's daughter? That awful man who's always yelling at you?" Michael smiled. His mother knew all about his tyrannical boss. "Yes, but the girl is completely different from him. She's sweet and smart." "And does her father know about this?" The question hit Michael like a punch. No, Richard definitely didn't know. And he'd probably have a fit if he found out. "She lives with her mother. It was her who invited me," he half explained. Mrs. Evelyn looked at her son with eyes that seemed to see right through him. "Be careful, my boy. People in power can be dangerous." When crossed, Michael nodded, knowing she was right. At 9:30, Michael stood in front of New World Academy, an elite private school in one of Miami's wealthiest neighborhoods. He wore his best clothes, navy dress pants, a crisp white shirt, and the only pair of leather shoes he owned, saved for special occasions. In his hands was a small gift wrapped in colorful paper, a children's book he'd bought at a bookstore near the bus station, spending part of the money he'd saved for his mother's medicine. The feeling of being out of place was overwhelming. Well-dressed parents arrived in luxury cars, eyeing him with curiosity and, in some cases, suspicion. Michael took a deep breath and entered the school courtyard, following signs to the auditorium, where the event "Special People in Our Lives" was taking place. When he stepped into the partially filled auditorium, he felt several eyes on him. It wasn't hard to guess why. He was one of the few black adults there, and certainly the only one not wearing designer clothes. "Michael!" Emma's voice cut through the air, and he saw her waving enthusiastically from the front row. As he approached, he noticed Catherine sitting beside her, elegant in her business suit. She smiled when she saw him. "You really came," Emma exclaimed, hugging him impulsively. "I promised, didn't I?" Michael replied, handing her the small gift. "A present for my friend." Emma carefully unwrapped the package, revealing an illustrated copy of The Little Prince. "Wow, I've always wanted to read this." Her eyes sparkled. "Thank you, Michael." Catherine watched the interaction with a warm smile. "It was very kind of you to come, Michael." Emma was so excited she barely slept. "My pleasure," he answered sincerely. The teacher called for everyone's attention, explaining that each child would introduce their special person and share why they admired them. As one child after another presented parents, grandparents, or uncles, Michael felt more and more out of place. What would Emma say about him? They had only known each other for a day. When it was Emma's turn, she walked onto the stage hand in hand with Michael, confident and smiling. "This is my friend Michael," she began, looking at the audience. "He works at my dad's hotel as a bellhop. We met yesterday when everyone was too busy to help me except him." Michael felt his face burn, aware of the surprised looks from the other parents. "Michael is special because he's kind when he doesn't have to be," Emma continued, with the surprising wisdom of a child. "He gave me lunch when I was hungry, let me help with his work, and even after my dad yelled at him, he still wanted to be my friend." Catherine looked at her daughter with a mix of pride and surprise. Clearly, Emma hadn't shared all the details at home. "When I grow up," Emma went on, "I want to be like Michael, who helps people even when he's tired and sad. That's what makes someone really important, not their job or how much money they make." A silence fell over the auditorium, followed by enthusiastic applause. The teacher, visibly moved, thanked Emma for her unique and special presentation. When they returned to their seats, Michael was speechless. How had that little girl understood so much about him in such a short time? After the ceremony, as he chatted with Catherine and Emma in the schoolyard, Michael felt a chill down his spine. Turning around, he saw Richard Peterson standing a few feet away, watching them with an expression mixing shock and fury. "What the hell are you doing here?" Richard asked, striding toward them. Richard, I can explain, Catherine intervened, stepping between them. Explain what? How our employee is at our daughter's school pretending to be part of the family. Richard was red with anger. I invited him, Richard. Catherine kept her voice calm but firm. Emma needed someone for the presentation and you said you were too busy. So you bring a stranger, a subordinate employee? Emma grabbed Michael's hand, visibly frightened by her father's reaction. Michael isn't a stranger, Daddy. He's my friend. Emma, get in the car. Richard ordered. Now, no. The girl surprised everyone with her defiance. You're being mean to Michael, like always. Richard seemed stunned by his daughter's accusation. Like always. I see how you yell at him at the hotel, Emma continued, tears welling in her eyes. You're mean to him every day and he was still nice to me. Why can't you be kind like him? The innocent, direct question hit Richard like a slap. He looked at his daughter, then at Michael, and finally at Catherine, who watched him with a serious expression. We'll talk about this at home, Emma, he said finally, his voice more controlled. Say goodbye to your friend. Emma hugged Michael tightly. Thank you for coming, she said, wiping her tears. You were the best guest ever. Michael smiled at her, trying to convey courage. It was an honor, Emma. Take care. Okay. As Emma reluctantly walked to the car with her father, Catherine lingered behind for a moment. I'm sorry about that, Michael, she said with genuine regret. Richard wasn't even supposed to be here. He showed up unexpectedly. Don't worry about me, Michael replied. I just hope Emma doesn't get in trouble because of me. Emma will be fine. I have custody of her and Richard only sees her on weekends, Catherine explained. The problem is, well, this is going to make things even harder for you at the hotel, isn't it? Michael shrugged, trying to appear carefree. They weren't easy before. Why do you stay there? With your education and people skills, you could work anywhere. The question took Michael by surprise. How did she know about his education? Emma told me you speak English and Spanish and that you're studying hospitality, Catherine explained, noticing his confusion. She's very observant. I need the salary for my mother's medicine, Michael replied, and few places offer the flexibility I need to take care of her. Catherine nodded sympathetically. I understand. Look, I'm the HR director at Atlantic. Construction. If you need anything at all, here's my card. She handed him an elegant card with her name and contact information. And don't worry about today, I'll talk to Richard. Michael thanked her, though he knew no conversation with Richard would change the fact that he had disobeyed a direct order. His job was hanging by a thread. On the way home, Michael thought about Emma and the impact that little girl had already made on his life in just 2 days. There was something special about her, a wisdom and kindness that touched people. He remembered her words on stage and felt a wave of pride and gratitude. Maybe, just maybe, the day hadn't been a complete disaster. When he got home, he found Mrs. Evelyn in the living room talking to an unexpected visitor, Sarah, the hotel receptionist. Sarah, what are you doing here? He asked, surprised. Sarah stood up, looking relieved to see him. Michael, finally. I've been trying to call you all morning. My phone died, sorry. Did something happen? The hotel is in chaos. Richard came in like a hurricane, shouting your name and threatening to fire anyone who tried to defend you, Sarah explained. Then he locked himself in his office and hasn't come out since. Michael sank heavily onto the worn-out couch. It was because of the school, wasn't it? Mrs. Evelyn asked, looking worriedly at her son. Yes, Mom, he saw me there. What school? Sarah asked, confused. Michael briefly explained Emma's invitation and the disastrous encounter at the school. My God, Michael, you really like living dangerously, Sarah exclaimed, though there was a hint of admiration in her voice. What's going to happen now? Mrs. Evelyn asked, her hands trembling slightly, a symptom of Parkinson's. Michael held his mother's hands, trying to comfort her. I'll probably lose my job, he admitted, but we'll be okay, Mom, I promise. Actually, that's what I came to talk about, Sarah said. Something strange happened after Richard locked himself in his office. His wife, ex-wife, showed up at the hotel. They talked for almost 2 hours. Catherine came to the hotel. Michael was surprised. Yes, and when she left, Richard called the general manager for a private meeting. No one knows what was said. But what? Michael pressed. "The rumor is Richard asked to be transferred to the New York branch immediately." Michael's eyes widened in shock. Richard leaving his prestigious position in Miami. It seemed impossible. "There's more," Sarah continued. "Before I left, the general manager asked me to call you. He wants to meet with you first thing tomorrow." "With me? Why?" "I'm not sure, but—" Sarah hesitated, a small smile forming on her lips. "I heard him mention something about team restructuring." Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, don't forget to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It helps a lot for those of us just starting out. Now, continuing. That night, Michael barely slept, his mind filled with possibilities and worries. Would he be officially fired tomorrow? Or was there still a chance to keep his job? And what had happened between Richard and Catherine to cause such a drastic change? The next morning, he dressed in his impeccably pressed uniform and headed to the hotel, arriving 30 minutes early for the meeting. Several co-workers greeted him with nervous smiles, clearly aware of the summons. Sarah greeted him at the front desk with a hug. "Good luck in there," she said, squeezing his arm in solidarity. "Whatever it is, we're with you." The general manager, Dr. Robert Wilson, was a 60-year-old man known for his competence and discretion. He rarely interacted directly with lower-level employees, leaving that to department managers like Richard. "Mr. Johnson, thank you for coming," he greeted formally when Michael entered his spacious office. "Please have a seat," Michael obeyed, trying to control his nerves. "You wanted to see me, Dr. Wilson?" "Yes, we have important matters to discuss," replied the manager, adjusting his glasses. "First, I'm aware of the recent events involving you, Mr. Peterson, and his daughter." Michael straightened in his chair, bracing for the worst. "Sir, I can explain." Dr. Wilson raised his hand, stopping him. "No need. Mrs. Catherine Peterson has already provided me with a detailed account of what happened. I've also had a lengthy conversation with Mr. Peterson." Michael waited, his heart racing. "Mr. Peterson has requested a transfer to our New York branch, citing personal reasons. The request has been approved, and he'll be leaving at the end of the week," Dr. Wilson informed him, carefully observing Michael's reaction. "I didn't know," Michael replied, still processing the news. "Naturally, this leaves a vacancy in our executive team," the manager continued. "A position we need to fill quickly." Michael nodded, unsure where this was leading. "Surely they weren't considering him to replace Richard." "Mrs. Sarah mentioned you're studying hospitality, correct?" "Yes, sir. I'm in my final year, studying." "In my free time," Michael confirmed, surprised by the change of subject. "And from what I understand, you speak English and Spanish fluently?" "Yes, I taught myself." "It helps with our international guests." Dr. Wilson smiled slightly, the first less formal expression since the conversation began. "Mr. Johnson, I'll be direct. One reason we didn't intervene sooner in Mr. Peterson's managerial style was his undeniable talent for operations. However, I've always considered his approach with the team problematic." Michael remained silent, taken aback by the unusual candor. What happened with his daughter was just the catalyst for a situation that had been deteriorating for months. "Several employees have filed complaints about his behavior," Dr. Wilson sighed. "Unfortunately, in large corporations, operational efficiency sometimes speaks louder than team well-being, a mistake we're determined to correct." "I understand, sir," Michael replied, still unsure where this was going. "I don't think you fully understand, Mr. Johnson." Dr. Wilson leaned forward. "I'm offering you an opportunity, not to replace Mr. Peterson directly, of course. That would require years of managerial experience you don't yet have." Michael felt a spark of hope. "However, we're creating a new position, guest experience supervisor. Someone who coordinates different departments to ensure our guests receive the best possible service. Someone who understands operations from the ground up and has genuine empathy for both guests and staff. And you're considering me for this role?" Michael asked, incredulous. "I'm not considering, Mr. Johnson, I'm offering. The position comes with a significant pay raise, a new schedule that will allow you to complete your studies properly, and extended healthcare coverage that will include your mother's treatments." Michael felt his eyes well up and fought to maintain his composure. "I don't know what to say, Dr. Wilson. Yes would be a good start, the manager replied with a faint smile. Obviously, you'll have a 3-month probationary period and will need to complete your degree. But based on what I've seen and heard, I have full confidence in your abilities. Yes, I accept, sir. Thank you so much for the opportunity. Excellent. Dr. Wilson stood up, extending his hand to seal the agreement. There's one additional detail that might interest you. Mrs. Catherine Peterson mentioned that Emma would be very disappointed if she couldn't see you anymore. She and her daughter will come regularly on weekends to have lunch at the hotel restaurant. Catherine suggested you might occasionally join them if your schedule allows. Michael smiled, remembering the little girl who had changed his life in just 2 days. It would be an honor, sir. When he left the office, Michael was greeted by a small crowd of anxious co-workers, led by Sarah and Mrs. Betty from the kitchen. Well? Sarah asked, practically jumping with anticipation. Michael looked at the hopeful faces around him, people who had witnessed his daily humiliation at Richard's hands and were now waiting to hear his fate. Looks like you're staring at the new guest experience supervisor, he announced, with a shy smile. The celebration that followed drew the attention of guests and other staff. Sarah hugged him tightly, Mrs. Betty openly cried, and several bellhops enthusiastically patted his back. Amid the excitement, Michael thought about how life could change so quickly, and how one little girl had been the catalyst for a transformation he never could have imagined. That night, when he shared the news with Mrs. Evelyn, he saw his mother's face light up with pride and relief. For the first time in years, the future looked bright. Her treatment would be secured, he could finish his studies properly, and maybe, just maybe, he could make a difference in other people's lives just as Emma had done in his. 3 months passed, and Michael adjusted well to his new role. His mornings were now dedicated to supervising the service team, ensuring every guest received impeccable treatment. His afternoons were reserved for strategy meetings, and twice a week, classes at the hospitality college, where he was now treated with newfound respect by professors who had noticed his promotion. On a sunny Sunday, as had become tradition, Michael sat on the hotel restaurant's terrace for lunch with Catherine and Emma. The little girl ran to hug him as soon as she saw him. "Michael, I have news!" she exclaimed excitedly. "Daddy invited me to spend vacation with him in New York." "That's wonderful, Emma," Michael replied, genuinely happy for her. "He's different now," Emma continued as she sat down. "Less angry. He even apologized for yelling so much before." Catherine smiled, exchanging a meaningful glance with Michael. "Richard is in therapy," she explained quietly. Apparently, the incident at the hotel was a turning point for him. Seeing how his daughter admired someone he treated so poorly. "I'm glad things are improving," Michael said sincerely. "For all of us," Catherine agreed, her gaze softening as she looked at him. Over the past few weeks, their Sunday lunches had become something they all eagerly anticipated, and the friendship between Michael and Catherine had blossomed into something neither had expected. Emma, observant as ever, looked between them with a knowing smile. "Did you know people at the hotel say you're the best supervisor they've ever had?" she asked, changing the subject. "The lady who cleans the rooms told me that when I visited you last week." Michael blushed. "Slightly. I'm just trying to be fair to everyone. It's more than that," Catherine interjected. "Do you remember every employee's name? Know their stories, their struggles. That makes all the difference." The conversation was interrupted by the arrival of a familiar figure, Dr. Wilson, accompanied by an elderly couple whom Michael recognized as important investors in the hotel. Mr. Johnson, how nice to see you," greeted the general manager. "I'd like to introduce you to Mr. and Mrs. Thompson, who are considering expanding their investments in our chain." Michael stood up respectfully to greet the couple. "Dr. Wilson has spoken very highly of your work with the team," remarked Mr. Thompson. "It's refreshing to see young talent being recognized." "The credit goes to the team, sir. I just try to support them," Michael replied with genuine humility. "Modest too," smiled Mrs. Thompson. "We need more people like you in leadership positions." After a few minutes of pleasant conversation, the group said their goodbyes, leaving Michael, Catherine, and Emma to continue their lunch. Emma watched, Michael with shining eyes. "You'll be the boss of the hotel one day," she declared with the absolute certainty only a child could have. Michael laughed, though the idea no longer seemed as absurd as it would have a few months ago. "Who knows, Emma? One step at a time." "Did you know it's because of you that I decided what I want to be when I grow up?" Emma asked, attacking her dessert ice cream. "Really? And what did you decide?" "I want to help people who are treated unfairly. Mom says I can be a lawyer or work in human rights." Catherine shrugged with a smile when Michael looked at her, surprised. "She's been talking about this since that day at school," Catherine explained. "You really made an impression on her, Michael." "And I didn't even try," he murmured, moved by the unexpected impact he'd had on the child's life. "The best. Lessons are the ones we teach without realizing," Catherine replied, her hand finding his under the table for a brief moment, "just by being who we are." At the end of that evening, as he watched Catherine and Emma leave, Michael reflected on the strange paths of fate. 4 months ago, he was a humiliated baggage handler, swallowing insults to keep the job that supported his mother's care. Now, he was a respected supervisor, finishing his degree, with Mrs. Evelyn's health stabilized thanks to the insurance plan, and a promising future ahead. All because of a little girl who had appeared alone in the hotel lobby on an ordinary day. A girl who had seen value in him when everyone else, even himself at times, had doubted. Michael smiled, remembering his mother's words on the night. It all began. "Be careful, people with power can be dangerous when crossed." She was right, but she'd forgotten to mention that people with power could also change lives for the better, especially when that power came in the most unexpected form, the wisdom and kindness of a child. The following week, during a meeting with the entire team, Dr. Wilson made an announcement that left Michael momentarily speechless. "As part of our ongoing restructuring, I'm pleased to announce that Mr. Michael Johnson will assume the position of Assistant Operations Manager, working directly with me starting next month." The applause was immediate and enthusiastic. Sarah, now promoted to front desk supervisor, thanks to Michael's recommendation, smiled proudly. Mrs. Betty wiped tears with her apron, and the baggage handlers, many of whom had suffered under Richard, just as Michael had, clapped with particular vigor. Additionally, Dr. Wilson continued when the noise died down, "We're implementing a new training and development program for all employees, regardless of position or department. Mr. Johnson will lead this initiative, identifying internal talents for promotion and growth." The irony wasn't lost on Michael. He who for so long had his own potential ignored and stifled by Richard would now be responsible for ensuring no other employee went through the same experience. After the meeting, as he gathered his thoughts in his new office, still small, but a tremendous improvement compared to the employee break room where he used to study, he received a message from Catherine. "Emma just found out about your promotion and is jumping around the house. She insists on celebrating with chocolate cake on Sunday. I wholeheartedly agree. Congratulations, you deserve every achievement. We're so proud of you." Along with the message was a photo of Emma, smiling, holding up a drawing where 3 stick figures, a female adult, a child, and a male adult, were holding hands under a bright sun. Above them, in colorful, uneven letters, the words, "My special family." Michael felt his heart warm at the image. Family. A word that for so long had meant only him and Mrs. Evelyn, now expanding to include new connections, new possibilities. Curious, he opened the top drawer of his new desk and found a small envelope with his name. Inside, a simple card with Dr. Wilson's elegant handwriting. "A man's true character is revealed not in moments of comfort, but in how he faces adversity and treats those who can offer him nothing in return. Congratulations on your well-deserved promotion, Robert Wilson." Michael carefully tucked the card away, promising himself to honor the trust placed in him. As he watched the hotel's activity from his office window, he reflected on how life could change completely in just a few months. That evening, arriving home, a new apartment closer to the hotel and much more accessible for Mrs. Evelyn, without the steep stairs of their old place, he found his mother sitting on the balcony, enjoying the sunset. "How was the new manager's day?" she asked with a proud smile. "Assistant manager, Mom," Michael corrected, sitting beside her, "and it was unbelievable." "Nothing unbelievable about it. Mrs. Evelyn held her son's hands, her own trembling less thanks to the new medication. I always knew you'd go far. Others just needed to see what I always saw. A 6-year-old girl. Michael shook his head, still amazed. Who would have thought she'd change our lives? Sometimes angels come in small packages, Mrs. Evelyn mused. This Sunday we're having lunch with them to celebrate, Michael said. Emma demanded chocolate cake. Mrs. Evelyn smiled, her sharp eyes studying her son. And her mother, Catherine, she's special to you, isn't she? Michael couldn't stop the smile spreading across his face. We're getting to know each other. It's complicated with all the history with Richard, but the heart doesn't choose a time or place, Mrs. Evelyn finished. And this Catherine seems like an extraordinary woman. She is, Michael agreed. Smart, strong, kind, and she accepts our complicated past. The past only matters for the lessons it teaches us, Mrs. Evelyn said, squeezing her son's hands. What matters is now and the path ahead. And in that moment, watching Miami's orange sky, Michael knew his path, once so uncertain and full of obstacles, now stretched ahead, full of promise. All because of a chance encounter, an act of kindness, and the unexpected wisdom of a child who saw beyond appearances. On yet another sunny Sunday, as Michael, Catherine, and Emma walked along the beachfront after their celebratory lunch, the little girl ran ahead of them, occasionally stopping to collect shells or watch the waves. She's so happy, commented Catherine, watching her daughter. I've never seen her like this before. Emma is a special child, replied Michael, his gaze following the girl with affection. It's more than that. Catherine turned to him, her eyes serious. It's you, Michael. You brought something into her life that was missing. Me? Michael seemed genuinely surprised. But she's the one who changed my life. Catherine smiled, intertwining, her fingers with his as they walked. Maybe you two saved each other. The thought stayed with Michael for the rest of the day, echoing in his mind as he headed home. Saving each other. Wasn't that how the best human connections worked? Not with a savior and the saved, but with people finding in each other exactly what they needed, exactly when they needed it. On Monday, his first official act as Assistant Operations Manager was to implement a new policy, the Second Chance program. Employees at all levels could recommend people from their communities who struggled to find jobs due to lack of experience or formal education. The hotel would offer training and internship opportunities with the possibility of permanent employment. Dr. Wilson not only approved the initiative, but expanded it to all locations in the hotel chain, turning what began as Michael's personal project into corporate policy. This goes beyond social responsibility, the general manager remarked during the launch ceremony. It's an investment in human potential, something we nearly lost in Mr. Johnson's case. Michael's story, without embarrassing details about Richard, became a case study for new managers. How to recognize hidden talent in the team and the dangers of a toxic work environment. At home, Mrs. Evelyn's health improved significantly with proper treatment. For the first time in years, she talked about returning to sewing classes to supplement her income, not out of necessity, but for the joy of teaching and socializing. As the weeks passed, the bond between Michael and Catherine deepened. They remained discreet at work, but on Sundays their lunches with Emma were eagerly anticipated by everyone. The girl, now with new friends at school thanks to the confidence Michael inspired, flourished academically and socially. One particularly busy afternoon at the hotel, as Michael rushed from one meeting to another, he was surprised by an unexpected call from Emma's school. The principal requested his immediate presence. His heart racing, he drove to the school, imagining 1,000 scenarios. Had something happened to Emma? Why were they calling him and not Catherine? When he arrived, he was led not to the nurse's office, as he feared, but to the school auditorium, where he found Emma on stage with other students. The girl smiled and waved enthusiastically when she saw him. "So glad you made it, Mr. Johnson," greeted the principal. "Emma insisted we wait for you before starting." "Starting what?" Michael asked, confused. "The special presentation. The students created projects about real-life heroes, people who made a difference in their communities. Emma chose you." Moved, Michael took his seat in the audience alongside other parents and guardians. When it was Emma's turn, she stepped confidently onto the stage, holding a large poster with photos of the Imperial Palace Hotel and Michael, in his new manager's uniform. "My hero doesn't wear a cape or have superpowers," she began. "He wears a suit and works at a hotel. His superpower is kindness, even when people aren't kind to him." The presentation continued, with Emma explaining how Michael had transformed not only her life, but also the lives of many hotel employees through the Second Chance program. She detailed cases of people who had found jobs, including Michael's neighbor, a single mother of 3 who now worked in the hotel's laundry. "My hero taught me that we don't need to have much to give much," Emma continued, "and that sometimes the greatest gift we can give someone is to believe in them when no one else does." When the presentation ended, the audience applauded enthusiastically. Michael couldn't hold back his tears as Emma ran off the stage to hug him. "Surprise," she exclaimed. "Did you like it?" "I loved it," Michael replied, his voice choked. "But I'm not a hero, Emma." "To me you are," she insisted with the unshakable certainty of children. "And to all those people who got jobs too." Catherine, who had been informed of the surprise, arrived at that moment smiling at the scene. "I told you she had planned something special," she remarked, joining the hug. Back at the hotel that afternoon, Michael was greeted by another surprise. Dr. Wilson and the board had approved the expansion of the Second Chance program, turning it into a formal foundation with its own budget. Michael would be its director, in addition to his responsibilities as assistant operations manager. "Your transformation story has inspired many people, Michael," Dr. Wilson explained, "from the humiliated bellhop to the respected executive who never forgot his roots. It's exactly the kind of narrative our hotel chain wants associated with its brand." As he processed the news in his office, Michael received an unexpected message. It was from Richard Peterson, the first communication since his transfer to New York months earlier. "Johnson, I heard about your progress at the company. Congratulations, I must admit you had qualities I failed to recognize. I hope you take good care of my daughter and Catherine. They deserve someone better than I was. Richard." The message, though far from a formal apology, represented an acknowledgement Michael never expected to receive. It showed that even Richard, with all his arrogance, had been capable of reflection and growth. Michael put his phone away, thinking about the strange journey that had brought him here. It had begun with humiliation and despair, turned into hope, and finally into a kind of triumph he had never dared to dream of. That evening, as he dined with Mrs. Evelyn, Catherine, and Emma in his apartment, Michael looked at the 3 women who had transformed his life, each in their own way. His mother, whose quiet strength and dignity in the face of illness had always inspired him. Emma, whose innocent insight and natural kindness had sparked a revolution in his life. And Catherine, whose support, intelligence, and growing love added a dimension he had never imagined possible. "What are you thinking about?" Catherine asked, noticing his thoughtful silence. "About how life takes unexpected turns," Michael replied, smiling, "and how sometimes the worst situations lead us to the best places." "Like when Daddy yelled at you at the hotel?" Emma asked, ever attentive. "Exactly," Michael confirmed. "If your father hadn't humiliated me so many times, I might never have learned the importance of treating everyone with respect, no matter their position." "And I would never have met you," Emma added. "And I wouldn't have realized what truly matters in a man," Catherine said, her eyes meeting Michael's with a silent promise. Mrs. Evelyn watched the scene with approving, shining eyes. "When your father left us so early, Michael, I wondered how I'd raise a good man alone," she said softly. "Now I know I succeeded." After Catherine and Emma left, following a dinner filled with laughter and plans for the future, Michael sat on the balcony, reflecting on everything that had happened. From humiliated bellhop to respected manager, from a lonely man to part of an extended family that included not only his mother but also Catherine and Emma, and all the employees whose lives he had touched through the Second Chance program. The daily humiliation at the hands of Richard, which once seemed like the worst thing in his life, had become the catalyst for his greatest blessing. And a little blonde girl with wisdom beyond her years had seen what everyone else, including himself, couldn't. His true worth, hidden beneath layers of difficult circumstances and denied opportunities. That night, Michael slept with a light heart, knowing that sometimes the hardest trials are just the path to the most beautiful destinies, and that sometimes all we need is for someone, even a 6-year-old child, to believe in us when we can't believe in ourselves. 6 months after Michael's promotion, the Imperial Palace Hotel was almost unrecognizable. Not in its physical structure. The marble floors remained polished, the chandeliers gleaming, the towels impeccably white, but in its atmosphere. Where fear and tension once reigned, cooperation and respect now flourished. Employees smiled naturally at guests, no longer forced by fear of reprisals, but out of genuine pleasure in providing good service. One Friday morning, Michael led a meeting with all departments. Around the large conference table were representatives from each area: front desk, housekeeping, maintenance, food and beverage, and security. Among them were 3 new faces, recently hired through the Second Chance program. Guest satisfaction has risen 27% in the last quarter, Michael announced, displaying the charts on the screen. Online reviews are consistently above 4.8 stars, and we've seen a 15% increase in direct bookings, with no commissions paid to agencies. Sarah, now front desk supervisor, smiled proudly. Much of this success was due to the new personalized service policy she had implemented with Michael's support. Guests are specifically mentioning the hotel's atmosphere, she added. Words like welcoming, friendly, and authentic appear constantly in the reviews. That's thanks to all of you, Michael replied. When people are treated with respect, it naturally overflows to the guests. The meeting continued with productive discussions and idea sharing. At the end, Michael stayed in the empty room for a few minutes, admiring the view of Biscayne Bay through the wide window. His phone buzzed, a message from Catherine. Emma's school meeting at 3 p.m. Can you make it? She has a surprise prepared, Michael smiled. Over the past months, he had become a constant presence in Emma's school life, attending meetings, performances, and even helping with projects. The teachers knew him by now, and many naturally assumed he was the girl's father, a misconception. Neither he nor Emma hurried to correct. I'll be there, he replied, checking his schedule. He'd have to move some reports around, but nothing he couldn't manage. His phone rang again, this time a call from the lobby. Mr. Johnson? The voice of one of the receptionists sounded hesitant. We have a situation here. A woman is insisting on speaking to the person in charge of the Second Chance program. I'll be right down, Michael replied. In the lobby, he found a woman around 50 years old, dressed simply but with dignity. In her hands, she clutched a worn folder tightly. Good morning, ma'am. I'm Michael Johnson. How can I help you? The woman studied him for a moment, as if assessing his sincerity. My name is Barbara Adams. I came because of the neighborhood. Association notice about the job program. Michael smiled warmly and gestured toward the lobby sofas. Let's sit down and talk more calmly. Over the next half hour, Barbara recounted her story. She had been an elementary school teacher for 20 years, until the school where she taught closed. Since then, she had survived on temporary jobs, which were becoming harder to find due to her age. The last interviewer didn't even try to hide it, she said with a mix of wounded dignity and resignation. He said they were looking for fresh blood. I'm 52, not 92. Michael listened attentively, recognizing in Barbara's situation echoes of the discrimination he himself had faced, though for different reasons. Mrs. Barbara, our events director is actually looking for someone with organizational experience and people skills to coordinate the hotel's children's events. Your teaching experience would be invaluable. Barbara's eyes shone with cautious hope. Are you serious? No elimination interview? No psychological test? No cultural fit assessment? She asked, quoting the corporate euphemisms that often masked discrimination. We'll have an interview, of course, but to discuss your skills and expectations, not to find reasons not to hire you, Michael explained. The Second Chance program exists precisely for people like you, qualified, experienced, but unfairly marginalized by the job market. When Barbara left the hotel an hour later, with an interview scheduled for the following week and barely contained tears of relief, Michael reflected on how small actions could have profound impacts. He had started the program thinking mainly of young people from underprivileged communities, but he soon realized exclusion had many faces: age, appearance, background, family history. Everyone deserved an opportunity based on their abilities, not prejudices. At 2:45 p.m., Michael arrived at New World Academy. The security guard at the entrance already knew him and nodded familiarly as he signed the visitor's log. In the courtyard, he found Catherine waiting by the central fountain. "Hi," he greeted her, giving her a light kiss. "How was your day?" Catherine smiled, her eyes revealing the exhaustion of someone managing a team of over 100 people. "Busy. We're finalizing the merger with the American construction company. But nothing a performance from my favorite daughter can't fix." They walked together to the auditorium where other parents had already gathered. Over the past few months, their relationship had deepened naturally. They visited each other's homes, shared dinners, weekend outings. Michael had been introduced to Catherine's parents, an initially tense meeting that turned into mutual respect when they saw the genuine affection between them. In the auditorium, they sat in the front rows reserved for family. Emma's teacher, Melissa, approached them with a smile. "So glad you both came. Emma is so excited. She's been working on this project for weeks." "What project exactly?" Catherine asked, curious. "Oh, I can't tell. It's a surprise," the teacher replied with a conspiratorial wink. The lights dimmed, and the school principal took the stage to introduce the presentation: Sustainable Future, Projects for a Better World. Several children presented ideas about recycling, water conservation, and solar energy. When it was Emma's turn, Michael felt inexplicably nervous. Emma stepped onto the stage with the confidence that had blossomed in recent months. Beside her stood a large poster covered with a cloth. "My project is about how companies can make a difference in communities," she began, her clear voice echoing through the auditorium. "I studied the Second Chance program at the Imperial Palace Hotel, created by Michael Johnson." Michael felt Catherine squeeze his hand as the girl revealed the poster. A detailed infographic showing how many people had been employed by the program, their life stories, and the impact on families and communities. "I interviewed 5 people who got jobs through the program," continued Emma, activating a digital presentation. "This is Mrs. Teresa, who now works in the hotel laundry. Before, she sold sweets on buses." The photos and stories followed, each more touching than the last. Emma had clearly dedicated herself to the project, conducting real interviews, collecting data, analyzing results. "I calculated that for every person employed by the program, 3 others benefit indirectly. Children who can now study instead of work, elderly who receive better care, families who can move out of high-risk areas." The presentation, too sophisticated for a child her age, showed how much Emma had matured and engaged with social causes, a transformation Michael watched with pride and admiration. When Emma finished, the audience applauded enthusiastically. The principal returned to the stage, visibly impressed. "I think we have a future social scientist among us," she commented, smiling at Emma. "This project not only meets all technical requirements, but also demonstrates a deep understanding of complex social issues." After the presentation, while waiting for Emma in the courtyard, Catherine looked at Michael with a serious expression. "You see the impact you've had on her life, don't you?" Michael nodded, feeling an emotion hard to put into words. "She's always been brilliant," he replied. "She just needed someone to truly listen to her. It's more than that. You gave her a model of how a person can make a real difference in the world." Catherine paused, choosing her words carefully. "And a model of the kind of man she should expect in her life." Before Michael could respond, Emma came running toward them, carrying her poster and a certificate. "I won first place," she exclaimed, throwing herself into Michael's arms. "The principal said I'll represent the school at the city science fair." Michael hugged her tightly, feeling a wave of pride. "That's wonderful, Emma. You worked hard and earned it." "Let's celebrate," declared Catherine, embracing her daughter. "How about we go to that ice cream shop you love?" On the way to the ice cream shop in Catherine's car, Emma excitedly talked about her plans to expand her project for the city fair. Michael listened, offering occasional suggestions, but part of his mind was processing Catherine's words about being a role model for Emma. It was a responsibility he'd never consciously sought, but now realized was a natural extension of his role in her life. The girl who had changed his life was, in turn, being shaped by his example. The thought was both daunting and deeply rewarding. At the ice cream shop, while Emma attacked a huge bowl of chocolate ice cream with extra toppings, Catherine took a moment while the girl was distracted to whisper to Michael, "I have some news. Richard called today." Michael felt an involuntary knot in his stomach. Though Richard had been in New York for months, his shadow occasionally loomed over them, especially in matters concerning Emma. "He wants Emma to come live with him," Catherine continued, her voice tense. "He says he's more stable now that he has a new girlfriend, that New York has better schools." "Can he do that legally?" Michael asked, keeping his voice low so Emma wouldn't overhear. "We have shared custody with primary residence with me. He'd have to go to court to change that," Catherine sighed. "But if he really pushes, it could be a long, exhausting battle." "What are you going to do?" "For now, nothing. He said we need to talk in person, that it's not a decision to be made over the phone. He's coming to Miami next week." Catherine gave Michael a meaningful look. "And he wants to see you too." The news caught Michael completely off guard. "Me? Why?" "I'm not sure. He just said he had matters to settle with you too." The possibility of Emma being taken to New York hung like a dark cloud over the rest of the day. Though they tried to keep the celebratory mood for the girl, both Michael and Catherine were visibly worried. The next morning, when Michael arrived at the hotel, he found Dr. Wilson waiting in his office. "Good morning, Michael," greeted the general manager, unusually formal. "We need to talk." Something in the older man's expression made Michael sit down slowly, bracing for bad news. "Did something happen?" he asked, trying to keep his voice steady. Dr. Wilson placed a folder on the desk. "The board is considering a new direction for the hotel. There's a proposal to turn it into an exclusive members-only resort with a limited number of suites and ultra-personalized service." Michael frowned. "That would mean significant staff reductions, yes," Dr. Wilson finished the unspoken thought, "including most of those hired through the Second Chance program." The room seemed to spin around Michael. Everything he had built over the past few months, all the people who had been given a fresh start through the program, all the smiles and tears of gratitude. "Who's proposing this?" he finally asked, his controlled voice masking the turmoil inside. Dr. Wilson hesitated visibly before answering. "The proposal came from the New York branch, specifically from Richard Peterson's team. The impact of the revelation felt like a physical blow. Richard hadn't truly changed. He had only retreated temporarily to plan his revenge more carefully." "Has the decision already been made?" Michael asked, his mind already racing for alternatives, ways to protect the people who depended on the hotel. "No. The board wants a counter-proposal from our team by next week, an alternative that maintains profitability without sacrificing what we've built here." Michael took a deep breath, feeling fierce determination replace the initial shock. "Then let's prepare. That counter-proposal. We'll show them our model isn't just socially responsible, it's economically viable too." Dr. Wilson smiled, seeming relieved by Michael's response. "That's exactly what I hope to hear. And there's something else you should know." He paused meaningfully. "Richard is coming to Miami next week to present the proposal to the board in person." "I know," Michael replied, surprising the manager. "He also wants to see his daughter and ex-wife. Apparently he's planning to file for custody of Emma." Dr. Wilson's eyes widened. "It seems our friend Richard is trying to reclaim everything he lost all at once." "We won't let that happen," Michael declared, unshakable conviction in his voice. "Not with the hotel and not with Emma." The following days were filled with intense work. Michael gathered a small, trusted team, including Sarah and 2 economists from the finance department. They worked nearly non-stop, analyzing data, projecting scenarios, building a solid case for maintaining and expanding the hotel's current model. At the same time, he spent every free moment with Catherine and Emma, helping the little girl with her project for the town fair and offering silent support to Catherine, who swung between determined anger and worry over a potential custody battle. On Wednesday night, Exhausted after another day of preparations, Michael found an unmarked envelope on his desk. Inside, a simple card with elegant handwriting that he immediately recognized as Dr. Wilson's. The true measure of a leader isn't seen in moments of triumph, but in how they respond to challenges. Remember, you're not alone in this fight, RW. The silent support from his mentor, more than any words of encouragement, renewed Michael's determination. On Thursday, after a long meeting with the team to finalize the counter-proposal, Michael received an unexpected visit in his office. Mrs. Betty, the hotel's cook. "Just a minute of your time, son?" she asked, her usually cheerful face marked with worry. "Of course, Mrs. Betty. Is something wrong?" She carefully closed the door before speaking. "The staff knows, Michael, about the New York proposal, about other possible layoffs." "How?" Michael was genuinely surprised. They had tried to keep the situation discreet to avoid unnecessary panic. "You know how hotels are, son. The walls have ears," Mrs. Betty sighed. "Some are already looking for other jobs, others are crying in private. Many here support entire families." Michael felt the weight of responsibility heavier than ever. "We're working to avoid any layoffs, Mrs. Betty. We have a solid counter-proposal." "I know, my boy. Everyone knows you're fighting for us," Mrs. Betty interrupted, emotion clear in her voice. "That's why I came here, to tell you we're with you." She handed Michael an envelope. The kitchen staff, maintenance, housekeeping, the porters, everyone signed. "These are testimonies, stories about what it was like working here before and after you took over. How you changed our lives." Michael opened the envelope with trembling hands and found dozens of letters, some typed, others handwritten, some with imperfect spelling, but all filled with palpable sincerity. "We thought it might help in your meeting with the directors," Mrs. Betty explained. "So they see we're not just talking about numbers, but real people." Michael couldn't hold back his emotions as he read the testimonies. Employees described how they could finally look their children in the eye with pride, how they'd managed to move out of dangerous neighborhoods, how they woke up without the constant knot in their stomachs they'd once carried. This sounds incredible, Mrs. Betty," he finally managed to say. "It'll make all the difference." The cook smiled, her eyes also glistening. "You did for us, now we're doing for you. That's how family works, isn't it?" Family. The word echoed in Michael's mind long after Mrs. Betty had left. That's what they'd built at the hotel, not just an efficient workplace, but a community where people genuinely cared for one another. On Friday, the eve of Richard's arrival and the decisive meeting with the board, Michael, Catherine, and Emma had dinner together in his small apartment. Mrs. Evelyn had prepared a full feijoada, insisting that important decisions shouldn't be made on an empty stomach. During the meal, they kept the conversation light, deliberately avoiding the tense matters awaiting them. Emma excitedly talked about the final preparations for the science fair, completely unaware of the storm brewing around her. After dinner, while Emma helped Mrs. Evelyn serve dessert in the kitchen, Catherine finally brought up the subject they'd been avoiding. "I'm scared, Michael," she admitted quietly. "Richard seems determined, and he has resources, influence. He can hire the best lawyers." Michael covered her hand with his. "I'm scared too," he confessed. "For the hotel, for the staff, for you both." Catherine intertwined her fingers with his. "We've faced hard things before. We'll face this too. Together." The simple statement contained a promise that touched Michael deeply. Together meant that no matter what happened with Richard, with the hotel, with the proposal, Catherine saw him as a partner, as a permanent ally in her life and Emma's. Saturday dawned with a cloudy sky, fitting for the emotional atmosphere Michael felt. The meeting with the board was scheduled for 10 a.m. at the central office of the hotel chain in Miami. Dressed in his best suit, with the folder containing the counterproposal and the employees' testimonials, Michael arrived at the imposing glass building in the city's financial district. In the lobby, he found Dr. Wilson, equally formal but with a confident expression. "Ready for the big day?" asked the general manager. "As ready as I'll ever be," Michael replied, adjusting his tie nervously. "Remember, you know this hotel better than any of them. You built something that didn't exist before. Don't let anyone downplay that." Dr. Wilson advised as they stepped into the elevator. The meeting room on the top floor had a panoramic view of Biscayne Bay. Around the large oval table sat 5 directors, including the chain's president, Dr. Edward Thompson, a 70-year-old man known for his traditional business views, but also for his unwavering honesty. And there was Richard Peterson, impeccably dressed with the same air of superiority Michael knew so well. Their eyes met briefly, and Michael noticed something unexpected in the former manager's gaze: uncertainty. "Ah, Dr. Wilson, Mr. Johnson. Excellent. We can begin," declared Dr. Thompson, gesturing to their reserved seats. The meeting started with Richard presenting his proposal. With polished charts and impressive projections, he argued for transforming the Imperial Palace Hotel into an exclusive members-only resort, a change that, he claimed, would increase profitability by up to 40%. "In times of economic uncertainty, we must focus on the ultra-premium segment, less susceptible to market fluctuations," Richard argued, his voice confident. "The current model, though admirable in its social inclusivity, simply doesn't maximize the property's potential." Michael studied the directors, trying to gauge their reactions. Some nodded, clearly impressed by Richard's projected numbers. Others kept neutral expressions, impossible to read. When his turn came, Michael stood slowly. For a brief moment, he felt like the intimidated baggage handler again, out of place among executives. Then he remembered the letters in his folder, the people who believed in him. Emma, Catherine, his mother. "Gentlemen, ma'am," he began, acknowledging the sole female director present. "I understand the appeal of Mr. Peterson's proposal. The numbers are impressive, on paper." He distributed copies of his counter-proposal, systematically dismantling Richard's arguments with real hotel data, not theoretical projections. "Over the past 6 months, our revenue has increased by 23%, our direct bookings have grown by 31%, and our occupancy rate is the highest of any hotel in the chain in the Southeast," he presented, displaying charts comparing performance before and after the implemented changes. Richard shifted uncomfortably in his seat as Michael continued. "More importantly, we achieved this while reducing staff turnover by 47%, cutting training costs, and improving service quality. The Second Chance program isn't just social responsibility, it's solid business strategy." Dr. Thompson leaned forward, visibly interested. "And operational costs? We reduced them by 18%, even with salary increases in some key positions," Michael answered, prepared for the question. "Motivated employees generate less waste, less damage to property, and most importantly, delight guests in ways no luxury furniture ever could." For nearly an hour, Michael presented his vision for the hotel's future. Not a return to the exclusionary model proposed by Richard, but an expansion of the current model, with special packages for families, incentive programs for socially responsible businesses, and a distinctive brand based not just on material luxury, but on authentic experiences. At the end, he handed over the folder with the employees' testimonials. "To conclude, I'd like to share something that wasn't originally planned. These are letters from the hotel staff describing the impact the changes have had on their lives. Because in the end, a hotel isn't made of walls and furniture, but of people dedicated to serving others." A contemplative silence fell over the room as the directors skimmed through the letters. Richard seemed increasingly uncomfortable, aware that his cold proposal of efficiency was being confronted with real human stories. Dr. Thompson was the first to speak after the presentation. "Impressive, Mr. Johnson. Very impressive." A brief discussion followed, with technical questions that Michael answered confidently. Finally, the chain's president stood up, signaling the meeting was coming to an end. "We'll make our decision by Monday. Both proposals have merit, and will be carefully considered," he declared formally, but his eyes, meeting Michael's, conveyed a respect that hadn't been there at the start. As he left the room, Richard approached Michael in the hallway. "Impressive presentation, Johnson," he said surprisingly without his usual condescending tone. "I expected nothing less." "Thank you," Michael replied cautiously, unsure about the apparent cordiality. "We need to talk," Richard continued. "About the hotel, about Catherine, about Emma." "When?" "Tonight. Catherine already knows." I'm staying at the Ocean View, Presidential Suite. At 8. With a brief nod, Richard stepped into the elevator, leaving Michael with an uneasy feeling. What did Richard really want? Was it a ploy to influence the board's decision through some kind of personal deal? Michael left the building with a mix of hope from the positive reception of his presentation and apprehension about the impending meeting with Richard. Somehow he knew the two matters, the hotel's future and the situation with Emma, were inextricably linked. That evening, Michael and Catherine met at the entrance of the Ocean View Hotel, both tense but determined. "How are you?" he asked, hugging her briefly. "Anxious, irritated, scared," Catherine admitted with a forced smile, but ready to face him. They went up together to the presidential suite. Richard opened the door himself, dressed in casual yet elegant clothes, looking strangely nervous. "Come in, please," he invited, leading them into the suite's spacious living area. "Can I get you something to drink?" Both declined. The mood was too tense for small talk. "Let's get straight to the point, Richard," Catherine said. "Why this sudden desire to have Emma living with you in New York?" Richard took a deep breath, sitting in the armchair across from them. "Things have changed, Catherine. I've changed." "In 6 months?" she asked skeptically. "Sometimes that's all it takes, a reality check," Richard replied, surprisingly without defensiveness. "Seeing your own daughter prefer a stranger over you tends to provoke some reflection." Michael remained silent, watching closely the man who had humiliated him for so long. There was something different about Richard, a vulnerability he'd never shown before. "I'm in therapy," Richard continued, "twice a week, working through issues I've carried since childhood." The revelation caught both Michael and Catherine by surprise. "That's good to hear," Catherine replied cautiously, "but it still doesn't explain why you want to take Emma away from school, her friends, and a city she loves." "Actually, I don't anymore," Richard said, surprising them again. "That was the main reason I needed to speak with you in person." He stood up, walking to the window with its panoramic view of the city. "I was using Emma as a pawn in a game against both of you, against you, Catherine, for moving on, and against you, Johnson, for earning the respect I never truly managed to have." The blunt confession left the room momentarily silent. "What changed?" Michael finally asked. Richard turned to face them. "Today, in the meeting, the employees' letters." He paused, as if the words were difficult. "One of them was from Mrs. Betty. She wrote about how I used to treat her, how she would cry, hidden in the pantry, and how now she feels respected, valued." He rubbed his face, a gesture of exhaustion or emotion, "and I realized I was about to do the exact same thing to my own daughter, use her to prove something, without considering what she really needs." Catherine and Michael exchanged surprised glances. "So you won't seek custody anymore?" Catherine asked, trying not to show premature relief. "No, Emma is happy here. She has friends, she's doing well in school, and she has—" He hesitated, looking at Michael. "She has people who genuinely care about her." A heavy weight seemed to lift from Catherine's shoulders. "What about the hotel?" Michael asked. "Are you withdrawing your proposal too?" Richard gave a small, melancholic smile. "There, we need to be realistic. It's business, not personal. Your proposal is good, Johnson. Maybe even better than mine in some ways. But I won't lie and say I'll withdraw mine. Let the board decide which path to take." It wasn't the answer Michael expected, but there was an honesty in it he could respect. "And there's one more thing," Richard added, sitting back down, "about the two of you." Catherine instinctively moved closer to Michael on the couch. "What about us?" "I'm happy for you," Richard said, surprising them once more. "Truly, Emma deserves someone like you, Johnson, someone who sees her for who she is, not as an extension of their own ego. I'm still learning that." The conversation continued for another hour, gradually shifting from tense confrontation to surprisingly honest dialogue. Richard spoke about his new relationship in New York, his therapy, his desire to be a better father to Emma, even from a distance. When they finally said goodbye, the air between them had changed. They weren't friends, there was too much history for that. but a mutual understanding had been established, a respect that once seemed impossible. On Sunday, Michael, Catherine and Emma spent the day at the beach, deliberately setting aside the worries of the week. Emma, still unaware of the adult dramas unfolding around her, built elaborate sandcastles and ran through the waves with the carefree joy of childhood. Watching her, Michael reflected on how life could change in unexpected ways. A year ago, he was a humiliated baggage handler, swallowing insults to keep his fragile livelihood. Now here he was on a sunny Sunday at the beach, beside the woman he loved, helping raise an extraordinary child, waiting for a decision that could solidify everything he had built. "What are you thinking about?" Catherine asked, sitting beside him in the sand. "About how one simple encounter can change everything," he replied, his eyes following Emma as she tried to jump over the small waves lapping at the shore. If Emma hadn't shown up alone at the hotel that day, "The universe has its ways," Catherine mused, "but I think you would have found each other somehow. Souls like yours and hers tend to recognize one another." On Monday, Michael arrived at the hotel earlier than usual. The board's decision would be announced at 9 a.m., and he wanted to be there to face the outcome in person, alongside his team. Dr. Wilson was already in his office when Michael knocked on the door. "Come in, Michael. Have you heard the news?" "Yet?" "Not yet," he replied, his stomach tight with apprehension. "I just got here." Dr. Wilson smiled, a broad, genuine smile that immediately put Michael at ease. "The board voted unanimously in favor of your proposal. The Imperial Palace Hotel's model will not only be maintained but expanded to other locations in the chain." The news took a moment to sink in. "Unanimously? That means—" "Yes. Even Richard voted in favor," Dr. Wilson confirmed. "Apparently, he withdrew his proposal last night, sending a detailed email to all the directors, explaining why his original model no longer served the company's interests." Michael sank into a chair, the tension of the past few days finally dissipating. "And there's more," Dr. Wilson continued, handing him an official envelope with the hotel chain's logo. "The board was so impressed that they want to expand the Second Chance program to all our hotels. You've been appointed Director of Social Responsibility and Community Development for the chain, with your own budget and team." The promotion was more than Michael had ever dreamed of, a platform to truly make a difference on a national scale, transforming more lives like those he had touched in Miami. "I don't even know what to say," he murmured, moved. "You don't need to say anything. Your results spoke for you," Dr. Wilson said, squeezing his shoulder in a fatherly gesture. "Some men spend their whole lives chasing respect through fear and intimidation, like Richard did. Others, like you, earn it through example and integrity. In the end, the latter always prevails." When the news spread through the hotel, a spontaneous celebration erupted. Employees hugged each other, some openly crying with relief. Mrs. Betty prepared an impromptu feast in the staff kitchen, and Sarah organized a group toast with fruit juice since they were still on the clock. Amid the festivities, Michael received a message from Catherine. "Emma just found out you got promoted and is planning a surprise party. Get ready for lots of chocolate cake this weekend. We're so proud of you. I love you." Those last three, words written for the first time, seemed to glow on his phone screen. Michael smiled, feeling a happiness he had never known before. That evening, when he visited his mother, Michael shared all the news: the promotion, the program's expansion, the peaceful resolution with Richard, Catherine's message. Mrs. Evelyn listened with a serene smile, her eyes shining with pride. "You know what makes me happiest about all this, son?" she asked when he finished. "What, Mom?" "Seeing that you haven't lost your essence. Power changes a lot of people, but you're still the same boy who always shared his lunch with classmates, who had none." Michael hugged his mother, reflecting on the incredible journey he'd been on. From a humiliated bellhop to a respected executive, changing lives. From a lonely man to part of a loving, extended family. And it had all started with a small act of kindness for a lost girl in a hotel lobby. Life sometimes presented challenges that seemed impossible to overcome, humiliations hard to swallow. But Michael had learned that with perseverance, integrity, and the courage to help others, even when you yourself are suffering, Even the most difficult situations can turn into opportunities for growth and redemption. As he left his mother's house on that starry night in Miami, Michael looked up at the sky and smiled, grateful for all the trials that had shaped him, for all the people who had believed in him, and most of all, for a little blonde girl who had seen value in him when he doubted himself. In the end, it's not the humiliations that define who we are, but how we respond to them. And sometimes our greatest challenges become our greatest blessings when faced with dignity, persistence, and an open heart to help others along the way. The end. Dear listener, if this story touched your heart as much as it touched ours, be sure to subscribe to the channel for more stories of overcoming and transformation. Share in the comments if you've ever witnessed or experienced an unexpected turn in life. Your support gives us the strength to keep going.